Before we begin, take a deep breath. Tonight we cross the silent thresholds between worlds where east meets west and memory lingers like a fading incense trail. These are not just ghost stories. They are gentle echoes of sorrow, love, and lives that never truly let go. If you feel called to these whispers of the unseen, subscribe to Bedtime Tales. Each night, we drift into quiet mysteries together. Now let the story unfold. Yuko sat on the Shinkansen, her eyes tracing the blur of green beyond the window-rolling hills and rice paddies fading into the twilight. She rubbed her tired eyes, her sketchbook open on her lap, filled with jagged lines and half-finished drawings. The chaos of city life had seeped into her art, her once fluid strokes now sharp and restless. For a month, sleep had eluded her, chased away by endless client calls, editor deadlines, and late-night revisions. Her heart felt like a taut string, ready to snap. "I need a break," she'd written in her journal, "somewhere quiet to rediscover why I draw." She'd chosen Tsukimi Village, a remote spot in Yamanashi Prefecture, drawn to an old inn she found online. Tsuki no Keijan, or Moonshadow Inn, looked like a painting itself. A low-roofed wooden building with a tiled roof, a weathered lantern by the entrance, and a cherry tree that must bloom spectacularly in spring. It was autumn now, the tree bare, but Yuko imagined its blossoms might stir her dormant inspiration. The train pulled into Tsukimi Station as night fell. The platform was deserted, lit only by a few flickering lamps. Yuko dragged her suitcase along a stone path toward the village, the air crisp with the scent of pine and earth. She breathed deeply, feeling the knot in her chest loosen slightly. Somewhere in the distance, wind chimes tinkled, their clear, lingering notes weaving through the quiet. She smiled, thinking it a charming quirk of rural nights. Moonshadow Inn was even more rustic than its photos. The wooden door bore faded carvings, and a string of wind chimes hung under the eaves, swaying gently in the breeze. An elderly woman greeted her, introducing herself as Mio, dressed in a deep blue kimono, her smile warm as winter sunlight. "Welcome, Miss Yuko," Mio said softly in Japanese. "You've come at the perfect time. Tsukimi Village is quietest in autumn." Yuko nodded, grateful for the warmth, and followed her down a creaking wooden corridor. Her room was on the second floor. Sliding open the paper door, she found a cozy simplicity. Tatami mats exuding a faint grassy scent, a low wooden table, and on it an old-fashioned lantern. Its washy paper shade, yellowed with age, was painted with soft purple bellflowers. Yuko set down her bag and stepped closer, drawn to the lantern's quiet beauty. Its wooden frame bore tiny cracks, as if touched by countless years. "This lantern's lovely," she murmured, brushing the shade with her fingers, its texture cool and smooth. Mio, lingering at the door, smiled. "It's an old piece, part of the inn's history. It gives a warm light at night." Yuko nodded, sensing a faint familiarity in the lantern, like a half-remembered dream. She unpacked her sketchbook and paints, planning to explore the village tomorrow for inspiration. Night deepened, and Yuko lay on her futon, the sound of a distant stream mingling with the wind chimes' soft clinks. She tried to sleep, but city images, skyscrapers, neon, her glowing laptop screen crowded her mind. Rolling over, her gaze drifted to the table. The lantern stood still, its bellflower pattern seeming to shimmer faintly in the dim light. She blinked, chuckling at her tired eyes' tricks. "Tomorrow will be better," she whispered, switching off the bedside lamp. The room sank into gentle darkness, pierced only by the chimes' distant song, as if answering her words. Unseen, the lantern's shadow stretched slightly longer in the moonlight. Downstairs, Mio tidied teacups, humming an old folk tune. She glanced at the second-floor window, her eyes lingering, then murmured, "The moon's so full tonight." Her voice held a faint sigh, as if addressing someone absent. Yuko drifted into sleep, dreaming of a misty bamboo grove, a faint light flickering ahead, guiding her. She reached for it, but it slipped away. The wind chimes echoed in her dream, whispering a story from long ago. Yuko woke to the soft patter of rain on the tiled roof, the sound blending with the faint murmur of the stream outside. She stretched on her futon, the Tommy's grassy scent grounding her in a way her city apartment never could. For the first time in weeks, her sleep had been deep, though fragments of her dream, a misty grove, a fleeting light lingered like brushstrokes on a canvas. She glanced at the lantern on the low table, its bellflower painted shade serene in the gray morning light. It seemed ordinary now, just an old, charming relic. Sliding open the paper window, she leaned out, breathing in the cool, damp air. Tsukimi Village sprawled below, its wooden houses nestled among bamboo groves and bare cherry trees, their branches swaying in the drizzle. The wind chimes under the inn's eaves tinkled softly, their notes clear and wistful, like a lullaby half remembered. Yuko smiled, deciding to sketch them later. Their delicate sound felt like the village's heartbeat. Moonshadow Inn was a world of its own, steeped in quiet history. The wooden beams overhead bore faint carvings, lotus flowers and cranes, worn smooth by time. The corridors creaked underfoot, and every sliding door revealed glimpses of faded beauty. A hanging scroll with a mountain poem, a ceramic vase holding a single autumn branch. Yuko wandered downstairs, her sketchbook tucked under her arm, drawn to the inn's rustic warmth. The common room had a sunken hearth, its embers glowing faintly, and a low table where a teapot steamed. Mio was there, arranging chrysanthemums in a vase, her movements slow and deliberate. "Good morning, Miss Yuko," Mio said, her voice as gentle as the rain. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in ages," Yuko replied, settling at the table. "This place feels timeless." Mio poured her tea, the steam carrying a faint jasmine scent. Moonshadow Inn has stood here for generations. It holds many stories. Her eyes crinkled, but there was a fleeting shadow in her expression, gone before Yuko could dwell on it. Sipping her tea, Yuko asked about the village, eager to explore. Mio spoke of a nearby shrine, a bamboo path, and a pond where koi swam under lily pads. "Take your time," she added. "Tsukimi Village reveals itself slowly." As she spoke, the wind chimes outside rang again, their notes lingering longer than the breeze seemed to allow. Yuko tilted her head, charmed by their persistence. "Those chimes are lovely," she said. "They were in my dream last night." Mio's hands paused on the vase. "They've hung there for years," she said softly. "Some say they sing for those who listen." Her tone was light, but her words carried a weight Yuko couldn't place. After breakfast, Yuko returned to her room to unpack her paints. She sat up by the window, sketching the view, rooftops glistening in the rain, mist curling around distant hills. The wind chimes sounded again, their melody weaving through her thoughts. She tried to capture their essence in her drawing delicate, fleeting lines, but her pencil kept drifting to the lantern on the table. Its bellflowers seemed to glow faintly, even in daylight, as if holding a secret light. She shook her head, blaming the overcast sky for playing tricks on her eyes. As evening fell, the rain stopped, leaving a crisp stillness. Yuko decided to stay in, too tired to roam the village yet. She lit the lantern, its warm glow filling the room, the bellflowers casting soft shadows on the walls. She worked on her sketch, the chimes outside ringing intermittently, their notes clearer in the quiet night. Each time they sounded, she felt a strange calm, as if they were speaking to her alone. Lying down later, she left the lantern burning, its light soothing. As she drifted towards sleep, the chimes rang again, long and clear, though the air outside was still. She opened her eyes, gazing at the lantern. For a moment its glow seemed to pulse, the bellflowers trembling like ripples on a pond. She blinked, and the light steadied. "I'm imagining things," she murmured, pulling the blanket closer. In her half-sleep, she thought she heard a faint sigh, woven into the chime's melody. The lantern's glow seemed to deepen, its shadows stretching across the tatami. Yuko turned over, her mind heavy with fatigue, unaware that the lantern's light lingered a moment longer after she closed her eyes. Downstairs, Mio sat by the hearth, her needle pausing over a piece of embroidery. The chimes rang once more, and she looked toward the ceiling, her lips moving silently. "She's here again," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The fire crackled, casting her shadow long and still. Yuko dreamed again of the bamboo grove, the distant light flickering, closer now but still out of reach. The chimes followed her into the dream, their song soft and unending. The morning light filtered through the paper window, casting a soft glow across Yuko's room. She sat cross-legged on the tatami, her sketchbook open to a half-finished drawing of the village rooftops. The wind chimes outside rang gently, their notes drifting in like a quiet companion. She'd grown fond of their sound, finding it oddly comforting, though she noticed they seemed to ring even when the air was still. Shaking off the thought, she dipped her brush in ink, trying to capture the mist that clung to the hills. The lantern on the table caught her eye again. Its bellflower-painted shade seemed to shimmer faintly, as if lit from within, though it was unlit in the daylight. Yuko tilted her head, studying it. The cracks in its wooden frame looked deeper today, like veins in an old tree. She reached out, tracing the edge of a bellflower. The paper felt oddly warm, though the room was cool. "Strange," she murmured, then laughed softly. "I must still be jet-lagged from the city." She decided to explore the inn before heading to the village. Sliding open her door, she wandered the creaking corridors, her footsteps muffled on the polished wood. The walls were adorned with faded scrolls ink paintings of mountains, cranes, and lotus ponds. One caught her attention, a small weathered painting in an alcove depicting a woman in a flowing kimono, standing by a lantern under a cherry tree. The woman's face was blurred, as if the artist had left it unfinished, but her posture felt wistful, her hand outstretched toward the lantern's light. Yuko leaned closer, intrigued. The painting's colors were muted, yet the lantern's glow seemed almost lifelike, echoing the one in her room. She wondered about its story, imagining a tale of lost love or a forgotten promise. The wind chimes rang outside, their melody sharper for a moment as if punctuating her thoughts. She smiled, thinking how perfectly the inn's details would fit her next illustration. Downstairs, Mio was sweeping the entrance, her movements slow and rhythmic. "Good morning, Miss Yuko," she said, pausing to adjust the wind chimes. "Planning to sketch the village today?" "I think so," Yuko replied, glancing at the chimes. "Those sound so clear. Do they ever stop?" Mio's broom stilled briefly. "They sing when they have something to say," she said with a faint smile. "Old things often do." Her words were light, but they lingered in Yuko's mind as she stepped outside. The village was quiet, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth. Yuko wandered toward the shrine Mio had mentioned, her sketchbook tucked under her arm. The path wound through a bamboo grove, the stalks swaying softly, though no breeze stirred them. The wind chimes' echo seemed to follow her, faint but persistent, as if carried by the mist. She paused, listening, but dismissed it as a trick of the valley's acoustics. At the shrine, a small stone structure with a red torii gate, she found a cluster of lanterns lining the steps. One stood out, its washy shade painted with bellflowers, like the one in her room. She knelt to sketch it, her pencil tracing the delicate petals. As she worked, a single chime rang somewhere behind her, sharp and clear. She turned but saw only the empty path. "Must be the inn," she muttered, though the distance made it unlikely. Back at Moonshadow Inn, the day faded into a soft dusk. Yuko sat in her room, the lantern now lit, its warm light casting bellflower shadows on the walls. She flipped through her sketches, noticing how often she'd drawn the lantern without meaning to, its shape appearing in the curve of a hill, the outline of a cloud. The wind chimes rang again, their notes longer, almost mournful. She glanced at the window, expecting to see the strings swaying, but they hung still. Curiosity tugged at her. She stood and approached the lantern, peering at its shade. The bellflowers seemed to shift, their edges blurring as if painted in water. She blinked and the pattern steadied. "I need more sleep," she said, half laughing, though a spark of wonder flickered in her chest. The painting in the alcove came to mind, the woman by the lantern, her blurred face. Yuko wondered if the inn's history held a story worth uncovering. As night deepened, she lay on her futon, the lantern's glow a soft anchor in the dark. The wind chimes sang again, their melody weaving through her thoughts, gentle but insistent. She closed her eyes, picturing the woman in the painting, her hand reaching for the light. A faint creak sounded in the room, like wood settling, but Yuko was already drifting toward sleep. Below, Mio sat by the hearth, her embroidery needle glinting in the firelight. The chimes rang once more, and she looked up, her eyes tracing the ceiling. "She's curious now," she whispered, her voice soft as the rain that began to fall again. In her dream, Yuko walked the bamboo path, the lantern's glow ahead, brighter but still distant. The chimes followed, their song a quiet call, pulling her deeper into the mist. Yuko woke to the soft patter of rain on the tiled roof, her dream of the bamboo path and the glowing lantern fading into the morning's gray light. She lay on her futon, listening to the wind chimes outside, their notes weaving through the drizzle like a delicate thread. The sound was familiar now, almost comforting, yet she couldn't shake the sense that they rang too often, even when the air seemed still. She glanced at the lantern on the low table, its bellflower painted shade serene but oddly luminous, as if catching light from an unseen source. She rose and opened her sketchbook, her pencil tracing the lantern's shape, absent-mindedly. The cracks in its wooden frame seemed deeper in her drawing, like roots reaching into shadow. She paused, studying the real lantern. Last night its glow had seemed to pulse, the bellflowers trembling. She'd dismissed it as tiredness, but now in the quiet morning, curiosity stirred. "You're just an old lamp," she whispered, smiling, though her fingers lingered on the washy shade, warm despite the cool room. Deciding to explore the inn further, Yuko slipped into the corridor, her socks gliding over the polished wood. The air carried a faint scent of cedar and incense, grounding yet elusive. She passed to the alcove with the painting of the kimono-clad woman, her blurred face and outstretched hand hauntingly familiar. The lantern in the painting glowed with the same bellflower pattern as hers. Yuko leaned closer, noticing a tiny detail she'd missed before, a small, faded inscription at the bottom, inked in delicate kanji. "Tsukiyo," she read softly, the name meaning moonlit night. It felt like a whisper from another time. The wind chimes rang outside, their melody sharper, almost beckoning. Yuko followed the sound to a small courtyard behind the inn, where a stone path wound through mossy lanterns and a lone maple tree, its leaves at the path's end stood a wooden storage shed, its door slightly ajar. Curiosity tugged at her and she stepped closer, peering inside. The shed was cluttered with old furniture, folded screens, and dusty boxes, but something glinted in the dimness, a small, tarnished hairpin, shaped like a bellflower, lying on a shelf. Yuko picked it up, its metal cool against her palm. The craftsmanship was delicate, suggesting it once belonged to someone cherished. She wondered if it was connected to the painting's woman, perhaps named Tsukiyo. The wind chimes rang again, their notes lingering as if approving her find. She pocketed the hairpin, planning to ask Mio about it later. Back in the common room, Mio was preparing tea, her hands steady as she poured hot water into a ceramic pot. "Find anything interesting, Miss Yuko?" she asked, her eyes crinkling with a knowing smile. Yuko held up the hairpin. "This was in the shed. It's beautiful. Does it have a story?" Mio's gaze soft, but her expression was unreadable. "Old things often do," she said, setting the teapot down. "That shed holds pieces of the inn's past. Perhaps it belonged to a guest long ago." The wind chimes sounded again, their melody weaving through her words, and Yuko felt a shiver, not of fear but of wonder. That afternoon, Yuko ventured to the village pond, sketching koi gliding under lily pads. The wind chimes' echo seemed to follow her, faint but persistent, like a song caught in the mist. She drew the hairpin beside her pond sketch, its bellflower shape mirroring the lantern's pattern. The coincidence intrigued her, sparking ideas for a new illustration, a story of a woman tied to light and sound, waiting for something unfinished. As dusk settled, Yuko returned to her room, lighting the lantern. Its glow filled the space, the bellflowers casting intricate shadows that seemed to sway, though the air was still. She sat at the table, studying the hairpin under the light. The wind chimes rang outside, their notes slow and mournful, like a lullaby for someone lost. She glanced at the lantern, its glow deepening, the bellflowers almost shimmering. For a moment, she thought she saw a shadow move across the shade, a fleeting silhouette, like a woman's profile. She blinked, and it was gone. "I'm seeing things," she murmured, though her heart beat faster, not with fear, but with a quiet thrill. She opened her sketchbook, drawing the silhouette she'd glimpsed, her pencil tracing a flowing kimono, a hand reaching for light. The painting of Tsukiyo came to mind, and she wondered if the inn was sharing its secrets. Lying down, Yuko left the lantern burning, its light a gentle anchor. The wind chimes sang again, their melody wrapping around her thoughts. She closed her eyes, picturing the woman in the painting, her name a soft echo Tsukiyo. A faint rustle sounded, like silk brushing tatami, but Yuko was already slipping into sleep. Downstairs, Mio sat by the hearth, her embroidery untouched. The chimes rang once more, and she whispered, "She's listening now." The fire flickered, casting her shadow long and still. In her dream, Yuko stood by the pond, the lantern's glow reflected in the water, a bellflower hairpin glinting at its edge. The chimes called her deeper into the mist. Yuko stirred awake as dawn's light crept through the paper window, painting the tatami in soft gold. The wind chimes outside rang faintly, their melody a gentle echo of her dream, a pond, reflecting a glowing lantern, a bellflower hairpin glinting at its edge. She sat up, her gaze drifting to the lantern on the table. Its washy shade, adorned with bellflowers, seemed to hold a faint shimmer, even unlit. The memory of last night's fleeting silhouette, a woman's profile on the shade lingered, not unsettling but intriguing, like a half-finished sketch begging for detail. She reached for the bellflower hairpin she'd found in the shed, now resting beside her sketchbook. Its delicate curves caught the morning light, mirroring the lantern's pattern. Yuko traced its shape, wondering about its owner. The name Tsukiyo from the alcove painting surfaced in her mind, a whisper of moonlight and mystery. The wind chimes rang again, their notes clear and lingering, as if urging her to look closer. After breakfast, Yuko decided to stay at Moonshadow Inn, drawn to its quiet secrets. She wandered the corridors, her sketchbook tucked under her arm, pausing at the alcove with the painting of the kimono-clad woman. The blurred face and outstretched hand felt more familiar now, as if the figure were reaching not just for the lantern but for her. She noticed a new detail, a faint outline of wind chimes hanging in the painted cherry tree's branches, their strings barely visible. The discovery sent a shiver of excitement through her, and she sketched the painting, capturing the woman's wistful pose. The wind chimes outside sounded again, their melody weaving through the inn's stillness. Yuko followed the sound to a small room at the end of the corridor, its sliding door slightly ajar. Inside was a low table covered with a faded cloth, and on it a small, dusty box carved with bellflower motifs. Her heart quickened as she opened it, revealing a folded piece of washi paper, yellowed with age. Unfolding it carefully, she found a delicate ink drawing, a lantern glowing under a cherry tree, and beside it, a woman's silhouette, her kimono flowing like moonlight. The drawing was unsigned, but the word Tsukiyo was inked in the corner, in the same graceful script as the painting. Yuko held the paper to the light, marveling at its beauty. The wind chimes rang sharply, their notes almost a sigh, and she felt a strange warmth in her chest, as if the drawing were speaking to her. She tucked it into her sketchbook, eager to show Mio. In the common room, Mio was arranging teacups, her movements calm and precise. "Miss Yuko, you look inspired today," she said, her eyes twinkling. Yuko showed her the drawing. "I found this in a room upstairs. It's so beautiful." "Is it connected to the painting in the alcove?" Mio's smile softened, but her gaze lingered on the paper. "This inn keeps many memories," she said. "That drawing? It's old, from a time when lanterns lit the way for those who wandered. Perhaps it belonged to someone named Tsukiyo." The wind chimes rang outside, their melody slow and mournful, and Mio's voice dropped to a whisper. "Some things are left behind, waiting to be found." Yuko nodded, her curiosity deepening. She spent the afternoon in her room, sketching the drawing's details, the lantern's glow, the woman's silhouette. The lantern on her table seemed to respond, its unlit shade catching light in ways that defied the overcast sky. She lit it as dusk fell, its warm glow casting bellflower shadows that seemed to dance, though the air was still. The wind chimes sang again, their notes wrapping around her like a lullaby, and she felt a quiet connection to the inn's past. Flipping through her sketchbook, Yuko noticed how her drawings had shifted. The village's hills and ponds were there, but the lantern, the hairpin, and the woman's silhouette appeared repeatedly, as if her pencil were guided. She paused at her sketch of the alcove painting, noticing she'd drawn the wind chimes in the cherry tree without realizing it. The coincidence thrilled her, and she wondered if Tsukiyo's story was unfolding through her art. As night deepened, Yuko sat by the lantern, the hairpin in her hand. The wind chimes rang, their melody clearer, almost pleading. She glanced at the lantern, its glow pulsing faintly, the bellflowers seeming to ripple like water. For a moment she thought she saw the silhouette again, a woman's profile, her kimono flowing, her hand reaching toward the light. She held her breath, but the shade stilled, the glow steady. "I'm not imagining this," she whispered, her voice tinged with wonder. She felt no fear, only a growing urge to understand. The drawing of Tsukiyo came to mind, and she pictured the woman waiting, tied to the lantern's light. Lying down, Yuko left the lantern burning, its glow a quiet companion. The wind chimes sang, their notes a soft call, pulling her toward sleep. A faint creak sounded, like a door sliding, but she was already drifting into dreams. Downstairs, Mio sat by the hearth, her embroidery needle still. The chimes rang once more, and she murmured, "She's closer now." The fire cast her shadow, long and unwavering. In her dream, Yuko stood under a cherry tree, the lantern glowing at her feet, the bellflower hairpin in her hand. The chimes sang, and a figure shimmered in the mist, waiting. Yuko awoke to the soft chime of wind bells, their melody threading through the morning's quiet, like a gentle pulse. Her dream lingered, a cherry tree, a glowing lantern, and a figure shimmering in the mist, holding a bellflower hairpin. She sat up, her eyes drawn to the lantern on the table. Its washy shade, painted with bellflowers, seemed to glow faintly, even in the pale dawn light. The effect was subtle, almost natural, but it stirred a quiet thrill in her chest. She reached for the hairpin beside her sketchbook, its delicate shape catching the light, and felt a connection to the name Tsukiyo, as if the inn were whispering its secrets. She opened her sketchbook, her pencil tracing the lantern's curves without conscious thought. The drawings from yesterday, the lantern, the hairpin, The woman's silhouette felt like pieces of a puzzle. The wind chimes rang again, their notes clear and lingering, as if calling her to explore further. Yuko smiled, her curiosity deepening, not with fear but with a sense of wonder, like uncovering a hidden story in her art. Deciding to delve into the inn's history, she wandered downstairs, pausing at the alcove with the painting of the kimono-clad woman. The blurred face and outstretched hand seemed almost alive today, the lantern's glow in the painting mirroring the one in her room. She noticed a new detail, a faint shadow behind the woman shaped like a cherry blossom petal falling. It wasn't there before, she was sure. Her heart quickened, not with unease but with excitement, as if the painting were revealing itself to her. The wind chimes sounded outside, their melody weaving through the inn's stillness. Yuko followed the sound to a narrow staircase leading to the attic, one she hadn't noticed before. The wooden steps creaked underfoot, and the air grew cooler as she climbed. At the top, a small door opened to a dusty room filled with forgotten relics. A cracked tea set, a folded kimono, and a lacquered box etched with bellflowers. Her breath caught as she opened the box, revealing a bundle of letters tied with a faded red cord. The top letter bore the name Tsukiyo in elegant kanji, the ink still vivid despite its age. Yuko unfolded the letter carefully, its washi paper fragile but intact. The words were written in an old-fashioned script, describing a lantern lit every night to guide someone home, a lover, perhaps, lost to time. The letter ended abruptly, as if the writer had been interrupted. The wind chimes rang below, their notes slow and mournful, echoing the letter's longing. Yuko felt a pang of empathy, imagining Tsukiyo waiting, her lantern burning through countless nights. She brought the letters to the common room where Mio was polishing a wooden tray. "Miss Yuko, you've been exploring," Mio said, her eyes twinkling as she saw the bundle. "I found these in the attic," Yuko said, showing her the letters. "They mention a lantern and someone named Tsukiyo. Do you know anything about her?" Mio's hands paused, her gaze softening. "Tsukiyo is an old name in this village," she said quietly. "Some say she was a young woman who lit a lantern for someone she loved long ago. The inn keeps her memory in its way." The wind chimes rang, their melody sharp and clear, and Mio added, "Old stories have a way of lingering, don't they?" Yuko nodded, her mind buzzing with questions. She spent the afternoon in her room, reading the letters. Each spoke of small moments, cherry blossoms falling, a lantern's glow in the rain, a promise to wait. The words felt alive, as if Tsukiyo's heart still beat within them. The wind chimes sang outside, their notes blending with the rain that began to fall, and Yuko felt a strange warmth, as if the inn itself were sharing its grief. Lighting the lantern as dusk settled, she watched its glow fill the room, the bellflowers casting shadows that seemed to sway like petals in a breeze. She opened her sketchbook, drawing the scene from the letters, a woman by a lantern, waiting under a cherry tree. The wind chimes rang again, their melody wrapping around her like a lullaby. She glanced at the lantern, its light pulsing faintly, and for a moment, she saw the silhouette again, a woman's profile, her kimono flowing, her hand outstretched. It vanished when she blinked, leaving only the steady glow. Yuko's heart raced, not with fear, but with a quiet awe. "Who are you, Tsukiyo?" she whispered, her voice soft in the stillness. She felt no threat, only a pull to understand, as if the lantern were guiding her toward a truth. Lying down, she left the lantern burning, its light a gentle anchor. The wind chimes sang, their notes a soft call, pulling her toward sleep. A faint rustle sounded, like paper unfolding, but Yuko was already drifting into dreams. Downstairs, Mio sat by the hearth, her embroidery needle glinting in the firelight. The chimes rang once more, and she murmured, "She's hearing you now." The fire flickered, casting her shadow long and still. In her dream, Yuko stood under a cherry tree, the lantern glowing at her feet, the letters scattered like petals. The chimes sang, and a figure shimmered in the mist, her eyes full of unspoken longing. Yuko stirred as the first light of dawn slipped through the paper window, casting a gentle glow across her room. The wind chimes outside rang softly, their melody a faint echo of her dream, a cherry tree scattering petals, a lantern's light, and a figure in the mist, her eyes brimming with unspoken longing. She sat up, her gaze settling on the lantern on the table. Its bellflower painted shade seemed to shimmer, as if holding a secret glow, even unlit. The memory of the woman's silhouette, fleeting but vivid, sparked a quiet excitement in her heart, like sketching a story she was only beginning to understand. She reached for the bundle of Tsukiyo's letters, now resting beside the Bellflower hairpin, and her sketchbook. The letters' words, lanterns, cherry blossoms, a promise to wake felt alive, as if they pulsed with the same light as the lantern. The wind chimes rang again, their notes clear and wistful, urging her to dig deeper. Yuko smiled, her curiosity now a steady flame, not of fear but of fascination, as if the inn were inviting her to uncover its hidden tale. Deciding to explore the courtyard again, Yuko slipped on her shoes and stepped outside. The air was crisp, heavy with the scent of moss and rain-soaked earth. The stone path led past the maple tree, its red leaves glowing in the morning light, to the storage shed where she'd found the hairpin. The wind chimes under the eaves sang, their melody sharper, as she approached the shed's door, still slightly ajar. Inside, the clutter seemed less chaotic now, as if guiding her eye to a small, lacquered tray tucked in a corner, its surface etched with bellflowers. Yuko knelt, brushing dust from the tray. Beneath it lay a folded cloth, soft and faded, embroidered with a pattern of cherry blossoms and lanterns. Unfolding it, she found a small silver bell, no bigger than a plum, tied with a red cord. Its surface was engraved with a single bellflower, matching the lantern's design. She held it gently, and it chimed a clear, delicate note that echoed the wind chimes outside. The sound sent a shiver through her, not of unease but of wonder, as if the bell were part of Tsukiyo's story. She brought the bell to the common room, where Mio was arranging a tea set, her movements calm and precise. "Miss Yuko, you're finding treasures," Mio said, her eyes crinkling as she saw the bell. "I found this in the shed," Yuko said, holding it up. "It feels special. Does it belong to Tsukiyo?" Mio's gaze softened, her hands pausing. "That bell is old, like the lantern," she said quietly. "Some say it was rung to call someone home long ago. Tsukiyo's name lingers in such things." The wind chimes rang outside, their melody blending with the bell's echo, and Mio added, "The inn holds memories tightly, doesn't it?" Yuko nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. She spent the morning in her room, sketching the bell beside the hairpin and lantern. The letters lay open, their words inspiring her drawings. A woman lighting a lantern, ringing a bell under a cherry tree. The wind chimes sang outside, their notes a constant companion, and she felt a strange warmth, as if Tsukiyo's presence were guiding her pencil. As afternoon faded, Yuko returned to the alcove painting, studying the woman's blurred face. The cherry blossom petal's shadow seemed clearer now, almost falling from the tree. She noticed another detail, a faint outline of a bell in the woman's hand, barely visible against her kimono. Her heart quickened, and she sketched the scene, capturing the bell's delicate shape. The wind chimes rang, their melody slow and mournful, as if acknowledging her discovery. Lighting the lantern that evening, Yuko watched its glow fill the room, the bellflowers casting shadows that seemed to ripple like water under moonlight. She held the bell, giving it a gentle shake. Its chime blended with the wind chimes outside, creating a harmony that felt ancient, almost sacred. The lantern's light pulsed faintly, and for a moment, the woman's silhouette appeared again, her kimono flowing, her hand holding a bell, her profile soft and sorrowful. Yuko held her breath, but the vision faded, leaving only the steady glow. "You're trying to tell me something," Yuko whispered, her voice tinged with awe. She felt no fear, only a deepening urge to connect with Tsukiyo's story. As if the lantern, bell, and chimes were threads in a tapestry she was meant to weave. Lying down, she left the lantern burning, its light a quiet anchor. The wind chimes sang, their notes a soft lullaby, pulling her toward sleep. The bell rested beside her, and a faint chime sounded, unprompted, as if rung by an unseen hand. Yuko was already drifting, unaware. Downstairs, Mio sat by the hearth, her embroidery untouched. The chimes rang once more, and she murmured, "She's almost there." The fire cast her shadow, long and still, flickering with the lantern's distant glow. In her dream, Yuko stood by a cherry tree, the lantern glowing, the bell in her hand, chiming softly. The wind chimes sang, and a figure in a flowing kimono shimmered in the mist, her voice a whisper of longing. Yuko awoke to the gentle clink of wind chimes, their melody weaving through the dawn's quiet, like a thread of memory. Her dream lingered a cherry tree in bloom, a lantern's glow, and a kimono-clad figure ringing a bell, her silhouette fading into mist. She sat up, her eyes drawn to the lantern on the table. Its bellflower-painted shade seemed to shimmer faintly, as if kissed by moonlight, though the morning light was soft and gray. The bellflower hairpin and the small silver bell rested beside her sketchbook, their delicate designs echoing the lantern's pattern. The name Tsukiyo felt closer now, like a song half remembered. She opened her sketchbook, her pencil tracing the bell's curves, the lantern's glow, and the woman's silhouette from her dream. The wind chimes rang again, their notes clear and lingering, as if beckoning her to uncover more. Yuko's curiosity burned brighter, not with fear, but with a quiet thrill, as if the inn were guiding her toward a story, waiting. She felt like an artist uncovering a hidden canvas, each detail a stroke of revelation. Determined to explore further, Yuko wandered to the courtyard, the air heavy with the scent of wet moss and fallen leaves. The maple tree glowed red under the overcast sky, and the wind chimes under the eaves sang, their melody sharper as she approached the storage shed. Inside, the clutter seemed to shift in the dim light, drawing her eye to a small wooden chest tucked beneath a folded screen. Its surface was carved with bellflowers and cherry blossoms, worn but intricate. Her heart quickened as she opened it, revealing a single object, a faded silk ribbon, its deep blue threaded with silver bellflowers, tied in a delicate knot. Yuko held the ribbon, its texture soft and cool, like water against her skin. It felt personal, as if it had once adorned someone's hair, perhaps Tsukiyo's. The wind chimes rang outside, their notes blending with a faint hum, as if the ribbon carried its own quiet song. She tucked it into her pocket, eager to connect it to the letters, the hairpin, and the bell. Each find felt like a piece of Tsukiyo's life, scattered but calling to be whole. In the common room, Mio was arranging a vase of autumn branches, her hands steady and precise. "Miss Yuko, you're collecting the inn's treasures," she said, her eyes twinkling as she saw the ribbon. "I found this in the shed," Yuko said, holding it up. "It feels like it belongs to Tsukiyo. Is there more to her story?" Mio's smile softened, her gaze distant. "Tsukiyo's name is woven into this place," she said quietly. "That ribbon might have held her hair, lit by a lantern's glow. She was someone who waited, always waiting." The wind chimes rang, their melody slow and mournful, and Mio added, "The inn keeps her heart in its way." Yuko nodded, her mind alight with questions. She returned to her room, spreading the ribbon, hairpin, bell, and letters on the table. The lantern's unlit shade seemed to glow faintly, its bellflowers catching light in impossible ways. She sketched the ribbon beside the bell, her pencil tracing its flowing shape, imagining it tied in Tsukiyo's hair under a cherry tree. The wind chimes sang outside, their notes a gentle lullaby, and she felt a warmth, as if Tsukiyo's presence were brushing against her thoughts. As dusk fell, Yuko lit the lantern, its glow filling the room with dancing bellflower shadows. She studied the alcove painting downstairs, noticing a new detail. The woman's kimono bore a faint pattern of bellflowers, mirroring the ribbon's design. The cherry blossom petal's shadow seemed to fall further, almost touching the lantern's light. Yuko's heart raced, not with fear, but with awe, as if the painting were speaking to her. Back in her room, she sat by the lantern, the ribbon in her hand. The wind chimes rang, their melody clearer, almost pleading. The lantern's light pulsed faintly, and for a moment, the woman's silhouette appeared again, her kimono flowing, a ribbon in her hair, her hand holding a bell that chimed softly. Yuko held her breath, but the vision faded, leaving only the steady glow. She touched the ribbon, feeling a quiet connection to Tsukiyo, as if their stories were intertwining. "I want to know you," Yuko whispered, her voice soft in the stillness. The wind chimes answered, their notes wrapping around her like a promise. She felt no fear, only a deepening urge to uncover Tsukiyo's truth, as if the lantern, bell, and ribbon were guiding her hand. Lying down, Yuko left the lantern burning, its light a gentle anchor. The wind chimes sang, their melody pulling her toward sleep. A faint rustle sounded, like silk brushing tatami, but Yuko was already drifting into dreams. Downstairs, Mio sat by the hearth, her embroidery needle still. The chimes rang once more, and she murmured, "She's almost part of it now." The fire flickered, casting her shadow long and unwavering. In her dream, Yuko stood under a cherry tree, the lantern glowing, the ribbon in her hair fluttering. The bell chimed and a figure shimmered in the mist, her eyes full of quiet hope. Yuko woke to the faint song of wind chimes, their melody drifting through the morning like a whisper from her dream. A cherry tree in bloom, a lantern's glow, and a figure with a bellflower ribbon in her hair, her eyes shimmering with hope. She sat up, her gaze settling on the lantern on the table. Its bellflower-painted shade seemed to pulse with a soft light, even unlit, as if it held a piece of the moon. The bellflower hairpin, silver bell, silk ribbon, and Tsukiyo's letters lay beside her sketchbook, each object a thread and a story she felt compelled to weave. The name Tsukiyo was a quiet hum in her heart, like a melody she was learning to sing. She opened her sketchbook, her pencil tracing the ribbon's flowing shape, the bell's delicate curve, and the lantern's glow. The wind chimes rang again, their notes clear and lingering, as if urging her to uncover another piece of the puzzle. Yuko's curiosity was a steady flame now, burning with wonder, not fear. She felt like an artist uncovering a hidden masterpiece, each detail a brushstroke of Tsukiyo's life. Determined to explore the inn's secrets further, Yuko wandered to the corridor, pausing at the alcove with the painting of the kimono-clad woman. The blurred face and outstretched hand seemed almost alive, the lantern's glow vivid against the cherry tree's branches. She noticed a new detail, a faint outline of a ribbon tied in the woman's hair, its bellflower pattern matching the one she'd found. The cherry blossom petal's shadow had fallen further, now resting at the lantern's base as if marking a moment frozen in time. Yuko's heart quickened, not with unease but with excitement, as if the painting were guiding her deeper. The wind chimes sang outside, their melody sharp and beckoning. Yuko followed the sound to a small, overlooked room near the courtyard, its sliding door adorned with a faded bellflower carving. Inside was a low shelf holding a single object, a small, lacquered inkstone, its surface etched with a cherry tree and a lantern. Beside it lay a brittle sheet of washi paper, inked with a poem in elegant kanji. Under moonlight, the lantern waits, its bellflower glow a vow unbroken. The signature read, Tsukiyo, the script matching the letters and drawing. Yuko held the poem, her fingers trembling with awe. The wind chimes rang, their notes blending with a faint hum, as if the inkstone carried Tsukiyo's voice. She imagined the woman writing by lantern light her words of prayer for someone lost. The discovery felt intimate, like a secret shared, and Yuko tucked the poem into her sketchbook, eager to connect it to the other relics. In the common room, Mio was arranging teacups, her movements slow and deliberate. "Miss Yuko, you're uncovering the inn's heart," she said, her eyes twinkling as she saw the poem. "I found this in a room near the courtyard," Yuko said, showing her the paper. "It's Tsukiyo's, isn't it? What was she waiting for?" Mio's gaze softened, her hands pausing. "Tsukiyo's story is old, like the cherry trees," she said quietly. She lit a lantern, wrote poems, and waited for someone who never returned. Her heart lingers in these walls. The wind chimes rang outside, their melody slow and mournful, and Mio added, "Some vows are kept beyond time, aren't they?" Yuko nodded, her mind alight with images of Tsukiyo's life. She spent the afternoon in her room, sketching the inkstone and poem beside the ribbon, bell, and hairpin. The lantern's unlit shade seemed to glow, its bellflowers catching light in ways that defied the cloudy sky. The wind chimes sang, their notes a gentle lullaby, and Yuko felt a warmth, as if Tsukiyo's spirit were brushing against her thoughts, guiding her art. As dusk settled, Yuko lit the lantern, its glow filling the room with dancing bellflower shadows. She returned to the alcove painting, noticing the ribbon's pattern in the woman's hair was clearer now, almost shimmering. The wind chimes rang, their melody weaving through the stillness, and Yuko felt a quiet connection, as if Tsukiyo were standing beside her. Back in her room, she sat by the lantern, the poem in her hand. The wind chimes sang, their notes clearer, almost pleading. The lantern's light pulsed faintly, and for a moment, the woman's silhouette appeared again, her kimono flowing, a ribbon in her hair, her hand holding an inkstone, her eyes soft with longing. Yuko held her breath, but the vision faded, leaving only the steady glow. "You're sharing your story," Yuko whispered, her voice tinged with wonder. She felt no fear, only a deepening urge to understand Tsukiyo, as if the lantern, poem, and chimes were threads she was meant to follow. Lying down, Yuko left the lantern burning, its light a quiet anchor. The wind chimes sang, their notes pulling her toward sleep. A faint rustle sounded like paper settling, but Yuko was already drifting into dreams. Downstairs, Mio sat by the hearth, her embroidery untouched. The chimes rang once more, and she murmured, "She's nearly there." The fire flickered, casting her shadow long and still. In her dream, Yuko stood under a cherry tree, the lantern glowing, the poem in her hand fluttering. The bell chimed and a figure shimmered in the mist, her voice a whisper of eternal waiting. Yuko woke to the soft chime of wind bells, their melody weaving through the morning's stillness like a gentle call. Her dream lingered a cherry tree bathed in moonlight, a lantern glowing, and a figure whispering words of waiting, her voice carried by the wind. She sat up, her eyes drawn to the lantern on the table. Its bellflower painted shade shimmered faintly, as if holding a piece of the night's glow. The bellflower hairpin, silver bell, silk ribbon, letters, and poem lay beside her sketchbook, each object a fragment of Tsukiyo's story, now pulsing with meaning. Yuko felt a quiet certainty. The lantern's light was tied to a promise, one she was beginning to understand. She opened her sketchbook, her pencil tracing the lantern's shape, the ribbon's flow, and the poem's words. Under moonlight, the lantern waits, its bellflower glow, a vow unbroken. The wind chimes rang again, their notes clear and mournful, as if urging her to look deeper. Yuko's curiosity had become a quiet devotion, not driven by fear, but by a need to honor the story unfolding before her. She felt like an artist painting a portrait of someone she'd never met, yet knew intimately. Determined to piece together Tsukiyo's tale, Yuko returned to the letters, rereading their delicate words. They spoke of a young woman lighting a lantern each night, waiting for a lover who promised to return from a journey. The letters mentioned a cherry tree by the inn, a place where they vowed to meet again. One letter ended with a plea, "If you cannot return, find me in the lantern's light." Yuko's heart ached, sensing Tsukiyo's longing, a love left unfinished by time or fate. The wind chimes sang outside, their melody sharper, almost pleading. Yuko wandered to the alcove painting, studying the kimono-clad woman. The blurred face seemed less vague now, as if Tsukiyo's features were emerging soft eyes, a gentle curve of lips. The cherry blossom petal's shadow lay at the lantern's base, and the ribbon in her hair gleamed with bellflower patterns. Yuko realized the painting was more than art. It was a memory, a moment frozen in Tsukiyo's weight. Seeking more clues, Yuko returned to the courtyard, the air heavy with the scent of damp leaves. The maple tree glowed red, and the wind chimes under the eaves rang, guiding her to the cherry tree near the shed. Its bare branches swayed, though the air was still. At its base, half buried in moss, she found a small stone marker, etched with faded kanji, for Tsukiyo, who waits. Her breath caught, and she knelt, brushing the stone clean. The wind chimes rang, their notes blending with a faint hum, as if the tree itself were speaking. Yuko brought the discovery to Mio, who was in the common room, arranging a tray of mochi. "Miss Yuko, you're finding her heart," Mio said, her eyes soft as she saw the sketch of the stone. "I found this by the cherry tree," Yuko said, showing her drawing. "Tsukiyo was waiting for someone, wasn't she? Someone who never came back?" Mio's hands paused, her gaze distant. "Tsukiyo loved a young man, a traveler," she said quietly. "He left for the city, promising to return under the cherry tree. She lit the lantern every night, ringing a bell to guide him. But years passed, and he never came. Her light still burns in its way." The wind chimes rang, their melody slow and heavy, and Mio added, "Some promises linger beyond life." Yuko nodded, her heart heavy with Tsukiyo's story. She returned to her room, spreading the letters, poem, and ribbon on the table. The lantern's unlit shade glowed faintly, its bellflowers shimmering like stars. She sketched the cherry tree and stone marker, imagining Tsukiyo standing there, her lantern glowing, her bell chiming. The wind chimes sang outside, their notes a gentle lullaby, and Yuko felt a warmth, as if Tsukiyo's spirit were sharing her grief. As dusk fell, Yuko lit the lantern, its glow filling the room with dancing bellflower shadows. She sat by the table, the silver bell in her hand. She gave it a gentle shake, its chime blending with the wind chimes outside, creating a harmony that felt ancient. The lantern's light pulsed, and the woman's silhouette appeared, her kimono flowing, a ribbon in her hair, her hand holding a bell, her eyes brimming with quiet sorrow. Yuko held her breath, but the vision faded, leaving only the steady glow. "You loved him so much," Yuko whispered, her voice soft with empathy. She felt no fear, only a deepening urge to help Tsukiyo's story find peace, as if the lantern were a bridge to her heart. Lying down, Yuko left the lantern burning, its light a quiet anchor. The wind chimes sang, their notes pulling her toward sleep. A faint chime sounded, unprompted, as if the bell had rung itself. Yuko was already drifting, unaware. Downstairs, Mio sat by the hearth, her embroidery needle still. The chimes rang once more, and she murmured, "She understands you now." The fire flickered, casting her shadow long and unwavering. In her dream, Yuko stood by the cherry tree, the lantern glowing, the bell chiming softly. Tsukiyo's figure shimmered in the mist, her voice a whisper of love unbroken. Yuko stirred as the wind chimes melody wove through the dawn, soft and mournful, like an echo from her dream, a cherry tree aglow with lantern light, a figure whispering of love unbroken. She sat up, her eyes drawn to the lantern on the table, its bellflower-painted shade shimmering faintly, as if it held a fragment of Tsukiyo's heart. The bellflower hairpin, silver bell, silk ribbon, letters, and poem lay beside her sketchbook, each a piece of a story now taking shape. Tsukiyo's longing, tied to a lover who never returned, felt vivid, as if the inn itself was sharing her sorrow. She opened her sketchbook, her pencil tracing the cherry tree and stone marker from her last discovery. The words, "For Tsukiyo, who waits," etched in her mind. The wind chimes rang again, their notes clear and pleading, urging her to delve deeper. Yuko's heart was steady, not with fear, but with a quiet resolve to understand Tsukiyo's unfulfilled promise. She felt like an artist painting a portrait across time, each clue a brushstroke of love and loss. Determined to uncover more, Yuko returned to the letters, rereading their delicate words. One spoke of a night under the cherry tree, where Tsukiyo and her lover vowed to meet again, sealed with a lantern's glow and a bell's chime. Another hinted at his departure, a journey to the city, a promise to return by spring. The final letter, unfinished, read, "My lantern burns, my bell rings, but the path stays empty." Yuko's chest tightened, imagining Tsukiyo's endless wait, her hope fading with each season. The wind chimes sang outside, their melody sharper, almost guiding. Yuko wandered to the courtyard, drawn to the cherry tree by the shed. The stone marker gleamed in the morning light, and she noticed something new, a small, weathered notch in the tree's trunk, carved in the shape of a bellflower. Her fingers traced it, feeling a faint warmth, as if the tree held Tsukiyo's touch. The wind chimes rang, their notes blending with a soft hum, as if the tree were whispering her story. Seeking more, Yuko returned to the alcove painting, the kimono-clad woman's form clearer now, her eyes soft, her hand outstretched toward the lantern. The cherry blossom petal's shadow lay fully at the lantern's base, and the ribbon in her hair shimmered with bellflower patterns. Yuko noticed a faint outline in the background, a path winding into mist, as if leading to the village shrine. Her heart quickened, sensing the path was part of Tsukiyo's vow. She ventured to the shrine, the red torii gate glowing in the mist. The lanterns lining the steps stood silent, but the bellflower-painted one seemed to shimmer, its shade echoing her room's lantern. At the shrine's base, she found a small offering box, its wood worn, but carved with cherry blossoms. Inside lay a single object, a faded letter sealed with a bellflower stamp, addressed to Hiro, Tsukiyo's lover. Yuko opened it gently, reading words of quiet desperation. "Hiro, my light burns for you. Return to the cherry tree where I wait." The wind chimes echo followed her, their notes a mournful lullaby. Yuko brought the letter to Mio, who was in the common room, arranging a vase of bellflowers. "Miss Yuko, you're tracing her path," Mio said, her eyes soft as she saw the letter. "This was at the shrine," Yuko said, showing it. "Tsukiyo was waiting for Hiro, wasn't she? What happened to him?" Mio's gaze grew distant. "Hiro was a poet bound for the city," she said quietly. "He promised to return to Tsukiyo under the cherry tree, but fate kept him away. Her lantern and bell called to him, even after her time." The wind chimes rang, their melody heavy with sorrow, and Mio added, "Some loves linger in the light." Yuko nodded, her heart heavy with Tsukiyo's grief. She returned to her room, spreading the letters, poem, and ribbon on the table. The lantern's unlit shade glowed faintly, its bellflowers shimmering like stars. She sketched the shrine's lantern and the letter to Hiro, imagining Tsukiyo standing there, her light burning through endless nights. The wind chimes sang, their notes a gentle call, and Yuko felt a warmth, as if Tsukiyo's spirit were sharing her longing. As dusk fell, Yuko lit the lantern, its glow filling the room with dancing bellflower shadows. She held the letter to Hiro, its words echoing in her mind. The wind chimes rang their melody clearer, almost pleading. The lantern's light pulsed, and the woman's silhouette appeared, her kimono flowing, a ribbon in her hair, her hand holding a letter, her eyes brimming with quiet hope. Yuko held her breath, but the vision faded, leaving only the steady glow. "You're still waiting," Yuko whispered, her voice soft with empathy. She felt no fear, only a deepening urge to help Tsukiyo find peace, as if the lantern were a bridge to her heart. Lying down, Yuko left the lantern burning, its light a quiet anchor. The wind chimes sang, their notes pulling her toward sleep. A faint rustle sounded, like paper folding, but Yuko was already drifting. Downstairs, Mio sat by the hearth, her embroidery untouched. The chimes rang once more, and she murmured, "She's ready to help you." The fire flickered, casting her shadow long and still. In her dream, Yuko stood by the shrine, the lantern glowing, the letter in her hand. Tsukiyo's figure shimmered in the mist, her voice a whisper of eternal love. Yuko awoke to the faint melody of wind chimes, their notes threading through the morning stillness like a whisper from her dream, a shrine bathed in mist, a lantern's glow, and Tsukiyo's figure clutching a letter, her voice a soft plea for love lost. She sat up, her gaze settling on the lantern on the table, its bellflower-painted shade shimmering faintly, as if it held Tsukiyo's eternal light. The bellflower hairpin, silver bell, silk ribbon, letters, poem, and the letter to Hiro lay beside her sketchbook, each object a fragment of a story now coming into focus. Tsukiyo's unfulfilled promise to Hiro, her lover who never returned, weighed heavy on Yuko's heart, like a painting unfinished. She opened her sketchbook, her pencil tracing the shrine's lantern and the letter's words. "Hiro, my light burns for you." The wind chimes rang again, their notes clear and mournful, urging her to uncover the final threads of Tsukiyo's tale. Yuko's resolve was unwavering, not driven by fear but by a quiet empathy, as if she were an artist tasked with completing Tsukiyo's canvas. She felt a connection to the woman's longing, a vow that lingered beyond time. Determined to deepen her understanding, Yuko returned to the letter to Hiro, its words raw with desperation. It mentioned a promise made under the cherry tree, sealed with a lantern's glow and a bell's chime, and a gift, a poem Hiro had written for Tsukiyo, left behind before his journey. Yuko searched the bundle of letters, finding a small folded sheet tucked inside one, inked in a different hand. It was Hiro's poem, "My heart is a lantern lit for you. Under cherry blossoms I'll return." The words were tender, yet their unfulfilled promise pierced Yuko's heart, as if Tsukiyo's grief were her own. The wind chimes sang outside, their melody sharp and guiding. Yuko wandered to the cherry tree in the courtyard, the stone marker at its base gleaming in the morning light. She knelt, noticing a new detail, a faint carving beside the bellflower notch, a pair of kanji, Hiro and Tsukiyo, entwined like vines. Her fingers traced them, feeling a faint warmth, as if the tree held their vow. The wind chimes rang, their notes blending with a soft hum, as if the tree were whispering their love. Seeking more, Yuko returned to the alcove painting, the kimono-clad woman's form now vivid, her eyes soft, her hand outstretched, the ribbon in her hair shimmering. The cherry blossom petal's shadow rested fully at the lantern's base, and Yuko noticed a faint outline in her other hand, a folded paper, like Hiro's poem. Her heart raced, sensing the painting was a bridge to Tsukiyo's truth. She sketched the scene, capturing the poem's shape, the lantern's glow, and the woman's quiet hope. Yuko ventured to the village, drawn to the pond where koi swam under lily pads. The wind chimes echo followed, faint but persistent, as if Tsukiyo's spirit were near. By the pond's edge she found a small moss-covered stone, etched with a bellflower and the word hero. It felt like a final clue, a marker of his promise to return. Yuko held it, her heart heavy with the realization that Hiro's fate, perhaps illness, war, or tragedy, had kept him from Tsukiyo. The wind chimes rang, their notes a mournful lullaby, echoing her sorrow. She brought the stone to Mio, who was in the common room arranging a tray of tea. "Miss Yuko, you're carrying her story," Mio said, her eyes soft as she saw the stone. "This was by the pond," Yuko said, showing it. "Hiro never came back, did he? Tsukiyo's still waiting for him." Mio's gaze grew distant. "Hiro's heart was true, but fate was unkind," she said quietly. "He left his poem, his promise, but never reached the cherry tree. Tsukiyo's lantern burns for him, her bell calling still." The wind chimes rang, their melody heavy with grief, and Mio added, "Some loves wait forever." Yuko nodded, her heart aching for Tsukiyo. She returned to her room, spreading the letters, poem, and ribbon on the table. The lantern's unlit shade glowed faintly, its bellflowers shimmering like stars. She sketched Hiro's poem beside the cherry tree, imagining Tsukiyo reading it, her lantern glowing through endless nights. The wind chimes sang, their notes a gentle call, and Yuko felt a warmth, as if Tsukiyo's spirit were sharing her hope. As dusk fell, Yuko lit the lantern, its glow filling the room with dancing bellflower shadows. She held Hiro's poem, its words echoing in her mind. The wind chimes rang, their melody clearer, almost pleading. The lantern's light pulsed, and the woman's silhouette appeared, her kimono flowing, a ribbon in her hair, her hand holding a poem, her eyes brimming with quiet longing. Yuko held her breath, but the vision faded, leaving only the steady glow. "I'll help you find peace," Yuko whispered, her voice soft with resolve. She felt no fear, only a deepening urge to fulfill Tsukiyo's vow, as if the lantern were a bridge to her heart. Lying down, Yuko left the lantern burning, its light a quiet anchor. The wind chimes sang, their notes pulling her toward sleep. A faint chime sounded, unprompted, as if the bell had rung itself. Yuko was already drifting, unaware. Downstairs, Mio sat by the hearth, her embroidery untouched. The chimes rang once more, and she murmured, "She's ready to carry your light." The fire flickered, casting her shadow long and still. In her dream, Yuko stood by the pond, the lantern glowing, Hiro's poem in her hand. Tsukiyo's figure shimmered in the mist, her voice a whisper of eternal hope. Yuko awoke to the soft chime of wind bells, their melody weaving through the morning's quiet, like a gentle call from her dream, a pond reflecting lantern light. Tsukiyo's figure clutching a poem, her voice a whisper of hope unbroken. She sat up, her gaze settling on the lantern on the table, its bellflower painted shade glowing faintly, as if it carried Tsukiyo's heart. The bellflower hairpin, silver bell, silk ribbon, letters, poem, and Hiro's letter lay beside her sketchbook. Each object a piece of a story now clear in her mind. Tsukiyo's love for Hiro, bound by a promise unfulfilled, was a vow Yuko felt compelled to honor. She opened her sketchbook, her pencil tracing Hiro's poem, "My heart is a lantern, lit for you. Under cherry blossoms I'll return." The wind chimes rang again, their notes clear and pleading, as if Tsukiyo were asking for release. Yuko's heart was steady, not with fear, but with a quiet resolve to help Tsukiyo find peace. She felt like an artist completing a canvas, her role not to fight the spirit, but to weave its story to a gentle close. Understanding Tsukiyo's longing, Yuko decided to act. The letters and poem spoke of the cherry tree as the heart of their vow, where Tsukiyo lit her lantern and rang her bell for Hiro. Yuko believed that recreating this moment, lighting the lantern, ringing the bell, and reading Hiro's poem under the tree might fulfill Tsukiyo's weight, letting her know her love was remembered. She gathered the hairpin, bell, ribbon, and poem, tucking them into her bag, her heart alight with purpose. The wind chimes sang outside, their melody guiding her to the courtyard. The cherry tree stood bare, its stone marker gleaming, for Tsukiyo, who waits. Yuko knelt, placing the hairpin and ribbon at the marker's base, a quiet offering. The wind chimes rang sharper, almost approving, and she felt a warmth, as if Tsukiyo's spirit were near. She decided to wait until nightfall, when the lantern's glow would mirror Tsukiyo's vigil, and the moon would light the tree as it had in her time. Yuko visited the shrine, seeking a blessing for her plan. The Bellflower painted lantern stood among the others, its shade shimmering faintly. She placed Hiro's letter in the offering box, whispering, "Tsukiyo, I'll carry your light tonight." The wind chimes echo followed, their notes a soft lullaby, as if the shrine were listening. She sketched the scene, capturing the lantern's glow and the torii gate's quiet grace, her pencil guided by a sense of connection. In the common room, Mio was arranging a tray of tea, her eyes twinkling as she saw Yuko's sketchbook. "Miss Yuko, you're holding her story close," she said softly. "I want to help Tsukiyo," Yuko said, her voice steady. "I'll light the lantern under the cherry tree tonight, ring the bell, and read Hiro's poem. Will it help her find peace?" Mio's gaze soft, her hands pausing. "Tsukiyo's heart is tied to that tree," she said quietly. "Your light, your voice may let her know she's not forgotten. The inn will guide you." The wind chimes rang, their melody heavy with hope, and Mio added, "Some promises need only love to be fulfilled." Yuko nodded, her resolve deepening. She spent the afternoon preparing, tying the silk ribbon around the lantern's handle, its bellflower pattern gleaming. She practiced ringing the silver bell, its chime blending with the wind chimes outside, creating a harmony that felt ancient. The lantern's unlit shade glowed faintly, its bellflowers shimmering like stars, as if Tsukiyo were watching. As dusk fell, Yuko returned to her room, the lantern in her hands. She lit it, its glow filling the space with dancing bellflower shadows. The wind chimes sang, their melody clearer, almost expectant. She held Hiro's poem, its words echoing in her heart. The lantern's light pulsed faintly, and for a moment, Tsukiyo's silhouette appeared, her kimono flowing, a ribbon in her hair, her hand holding a bell, her eyes soft with gratitude. Yuko held her breath, but the vision faded, leaving only the steady glow. "You're ready, aren't you?" Yuko whispered, her voice tinged with empathy. She felt no fear, only a quiet urge to carry Tsukiyo's light, as if the lantern were a bridge to her soul. She stepped into the courtyard, the lantern casting a warm glow on the stone path. The cherry tree loomed ahead, its branches swaying in the still air. Yuko set the lantern at the marker's base, its light illuminating the carved names Hiro and Tsukiyo. She rang the bell, its chime blending with the wind chimes, a melody of love and loss. The wind chimes sang louder, their notes wrapping around her, and Yuko felt a presence, gentle and warm, as if Tsukiyo were standing beside her. She began to read Hiro's poem aloud, her voice soft but clear. My heart is a lantern, lit for you. Under cherry blossoms I'll return. The wind chimes rang, their melody a soft harmony, and the lantern's glow seemed to brighten, its bellflowers shimmering like moonlight. Lying down later, Yuko left the lantern burning in her room, its light a quiet anchor. The wind chimes sang, their notes pulling her toward sleep. A faint chime sounded, unprompted, as if the bell had rung itself. Yuko was already drifting unaware. Downstairs, Mio sat by the hearth, her embroidery untouched. The chimes rang once more, and she murmured, "She's carrying your light now." The fire flickered, casting her shadow long and still. In her dream, Yuko stood by the cherry tree, the lantern glowing, the bell chiming. Tsukiyo's figure shimmered in the mist, her smile soft with peace. Yuko stirred as the wind chimes melody drifted through the dawn, soft and hopeful like a whisper from her dream, a cherry tree aglow with lantern light, Tsukiyo's figure smiling with quiet peace. She sat up, her eyes drawn to the lantern on the table, its bellflower painted shade shimmering faintly, as if it held Tsukiyo's gratitude. The bellflower hairpin, silver bell, silk ribbon, letters, poem, and Hiro's letter lay beside her sketchbook, each object a thread in a story Yuko was helping to complete. Tsukiyo's unfulfilled vow to Hiro, her lover who never returned, was now a shared mission, and Yuko felt a quiet resolve to bring her peace. She opened her sketchbook, her pencil tracing the cherry tree and the lantern's glow, Hiro's poem echoing in her mind. My heart is a lantern, lit for you. Under cherry blossoms I'll return. The wind chimes rang again, their notes clear and gentle, as if Tsukiyo were thanking her for last night's vigil. Yuko's heart was steady, not with fear, but with a tender purpose, as if she were an artist painting the final strokes of Tsukiyo's canvas, helping her love find closure. Determined to continue, Yuko decided to honor Tsukiyo's vow fully. The letters and poems suggested Tsukiyo had waited under the cherry tree, lighting her lantern and ringing her bell, hoping Hiro would find his way back. Yuko believed that recreating this ritual again, with all of Tsukiyo's relics, hairpin, ribbon, bell, and poem, might let her spirit know her love was remembered, freeing her from her endless weight. She gathered the objects, tying the ribbon around the lantern's handle and slipping the hairpin into her hair, feeling a quiet connection to Tsukiyo. The wind chimes sang outside, their melody guiding her to the courtyard. The cherry tree stood tall, its stone marker gleaming. For Tsukiyo, who waits. Yuko knelt, placing the silver bell and Hiro's poem at the marker's base, beside the hairpin and ribbon from last night. The wind chimes rang sharper, almost joyful, and she felt a warmth, as if Tsukiyo's spirit were near, watching her efforts. She planned to return at midnight, when the moon was fullest, to light the lantern and read the poem again, hoping to complete Tsukiyo's vigil. Yuko visited the shrine to prepare, the red torii gate glowing in the morning mist. The bellflower painted lantern stood among the others, its shade shimmering faintly, as if echoing her room's lantern. She placed a small offering of bellflowers in the box, whispering, "Tsukiyo, I'll light your lantern tonight for you and Hiro." The wind chimes echo followed, their notes a soft lullaby, as if the shrine were blessing her plan. She sketched the scene, capturing the lantern's glow and the bellflower's delicate petals, her heart full of quiet purpose. In the common room, Mio was arranging a tray of mochi, her eyes twinkling as she saw Yuko's sketchbook. "Miss Yuko, you're carrying her light," she said softly. "I'm going to the cherry tree tonight," Yuko said, her voice steady. "I'll light the lantern, ring the bell, and read Hiro's poem. Will it help Tsukiyo?" Mio's gaze soft, her hands pausing. "Tsukiyo's heart is bound to that light," she said quietly. "Your actions show her she's not forgotten. The inn will guide you, as it always has." The wind chimes rang, their melody warm with hope, and Mio added, "Some promises are kept through others' hearts." Yuko nodded, her resolve deepening. She spent the day preparing, polishing the silver bell until it gleamed, its chime clear and pure. She reread Hiro's poem, memorizing its words, and tied the ribbon more securely around the lantern's handle. The lantern's unlit shade glowed faintly, its bellflowers shimmering like stars, as if Tsukiyo were watching with quiet anticipation. As midnight approached, Yuko carried the lantern to the courtyard, its glow casting a warm light on the stone path. The cherry tree loomed ahead, its branches swaying in the still air. She set the lantern at the marker's base, its light illuminating the carved names Hiro and Tsukiyo. She rang the bell, its chime blending with the wind chimes, creating a harmony that felt eternal. The wind chimes sang louder, their notes wrapping around her, and Yuko felt a presence, gentle and warm, as if Tsukiyo were standing beside her. She read Hiro's poem aloud, her voice soft but clear. "My heart is a lantern, lit for you. Under cherry blossoms I'll return." The wind chimes rang, their melody a soft harmony, and the lantern's glow brightened, its bellflowers shimmering like moonlight. For a moment, Tsukiyo's silhouette appeared, her kimono flowing, a ribbon in her hair, her hand holding a poem, her eyes soft with peace. Yuko held her breath, but the vision lingered, as if Tsukiyo were smiling. "You're almost there," Yuko whispered, her voice tinged with empathy. She felt no fear, only a quiet urge to complete Tsukiyo's vow, as if the lantern were a bridge to her soul. Lying down later, Yuko left the lantern burning in her room, its light a quiet anchor. The wind chimes sang, their notes pulling her toward sleep. A faint chime sounded, unprompted, as if the bell had rung itself. Yuko was already drifting, unaware. Downstairs, Mio sat by the hearth, her embroidery untouched. The chimes rang once more, and she murmured, "She's nearly home." The fire flickered, casting her shadow long and still. In her dream, Yuko stood by the cherry tree, the lantern glowing, the bell chiming. Tsukiyo's figure shimmered in the mist, her smile radiant with peace. Section 15. Yuko awoke to the faint melody of wind chimes, their notes soft and serene, like a whisper from her dream. A cherry tree aglow with lantern light, Tsukiyo's figure smiling with radiant peace. She sat up, her eyes drawn to the lantern on the table, its bellflower painted shade shimmering faintly, as if it held the last of Tsukiyo's light. The bellflower hairpin, silver bell, silk ribbon, letters, poem, and hero's letter lay beside her sketchbook, each object a thread in a story now nearing its close. Tsukiyo's vow to Hiro, a love unfulfilled, had become Yuko's mission, and she felt a quiet certainty that tonight would bring her peace. She opened her sketchbook, her pencil tracing the final scene from her dream, the cherry tree, the lantern, and Tsukiyo's gentle smile. The wind chimes rang again, their notes clear and hopeful, as if Tsukiyo were ready to let go. Yuko's heart was steady, filled with a tender resolve to complete the ritual, not as a confrontation, but as a shared act of love, like an artist finishing a canvas with care. Determined to fulfill Tsukiyo's vow, Yuko gathered the relics, hairpin, bell, ribbon, and poem, knowing the cherry tree was the heart of her promise. She believed that one final vigil, lighting the lantern and reading Hiro's poem under the tree, would let Tsukiyo know her love was honored, freeing her spirit. She tied the ribbon around the lantern's handle, slipped the hairpin into her hair, and held the bell and poem, feeling Tsukiyo's presence like a soft warmth. The wind chimes sang outside, their melody guiding her to the courtyard. The cherry tree stood tall, its stone marker gleaming under the moonlight. For Tsukiyo, who waits. Yuko knelt, placing the bell and poem at the marker's base, beside the hairpin and ribbon. The wind chimes rang sharper, almost joyful, and she felt a gentle presence, as if Tsukiyo were standing beside her. She lit the lantern, its glow illuminating the carved names, Hiro, and Tsukiyo casting bellflower shadows on the ground. Yuko rang the bell, its chime blending with the wind chimes, creating a harmony that felt eternal. She read Hiro's poem aloud, her voice soft but clear. "My heart is a lantern, lit for you. Under cherry blossoms I'll return." The wind chimes sang louder, their notes wrapping around her, and the lantern's glow brightened, its bellflowers shimmering like stars. For a moment, Tsukiyo's silhouette appeared, her kimono flowing, a ribbon in her hair, her hand holding a poem, her eyes radiant with peace. She smiled, her form shimmering in the moonlight, then began to fade, like petals carried by the wind. "You're free now," Yuko whispered, her voice tinged with warmth. The lantern's light pulsed once, brighter than ever, then soft to a gentle glow. The wind chimes rang one final time, their melody a soft farewell, and Yuko felt a quiet release, as if Tsukiyo's heart had found its rest. She returned to her room, the lantern still burning, its light now steady, no longer pulsing. She placed the relics on the table, her sketchbook open to the final drawing, a cherry tree, a glowing lantern, and Tsukiyo's fading silhouette. The wind chimes were silent now, their song complete. Yuko felt no fear, only a tender satisfaction, as if she'd helped paint Tsukiyo's story to its gentle end. Lying down, Yuko left the lantern burning, its light a quiet anchor. A faint chime sounded, unprompted, as if the bell had rung one last time. She smiled, drifting into sleep, her heart light with peace. Downstairs, Mio sat by the hearth, her embroidery untouched. She looked toward the courtyard, her eyes soft. "She's gone home," she murmured, the fire casting her shadow, long and still. In her dream, Yuko stood by the cherry tree, the lantern dark, the air still. A single petal fell, glowing faintly, and Tsukiyo's voice whispered, "Thank you." Yuko woke the next morning to a quiet village, the wind chimes silent under the eaves. She packed her sketchbook, now filled with drawings of lanterns, bells, and cherry trees, each a piece of Kyu's story. The lantern on the table stood unlit, its bellflower shade no longer shimmering as if its light had served its purpose. She touched it gently, feeling a quiet gratitude for the journey it had guided her through. In the courtyard, the cherry tree seemed lighter, its branches swaying in a soft breeze, the stone marker serene under the sun. Yuko left the hairpin, ribbon, bell, and poem at its base, a final offering to Tsukiyo and Hiro. As she boarded the train back to the city, her heart felt full, her art alive with new inspiration. The village faded into the distance, but Tsukiyo's gentle smile lingered in her mind, a quiet promise kept. The whisper fades, but its warmth remains. Somewhere between this world and the next, something was understood. If this story settled quietly in your heart, share it. It might be the story someone else needed. For more tales from haunted forests, forgotten temples, and lantern-lit paths, subscribe to Bedtime Tales. Sleep gently, dream deeply. We'll meet again between the veils.